Year of Career, 52 Practical Answers to Your Questions. I'm Erin Wolfram. I own and operate Career Advantage and Career Advantage Golf, where I help people feel more confident and prepared throughout their job search by helping with things like resumes, cover letters, LinkedIn profiles, mock interviews, really just anything job search related. But each week in this podcast, I answer one question from the public. And this week's question is, if I have a criminal record, should I mention it in an interview? And that is certainly a tough question. And I thought it would be great to have a perspective of a human resources professional. So I'm so excited to have a guest with me today. Liesel Sims is here. She's the Director of Human Resources at Midland Marketing, and I'm going to let her introduce herself a little bit more. So welcome, and thank you so much for being here.
I'm so excited to be here, Erin. Thank you so much for having me. Like she said, my name is Liesel Sims. I do all the human resources for Midland Marketing here in Western Kansas. I have a little bit of experience working with or interviewing with people who have had criminal records. And so I thought that this would be a great question for me to participate in your show today.
Wonderful. Well, let's just dive right in then. So in terms of interviews and people who do have a criminal record, what is your recommendation? If we just start with that larger question, should they mention it in an interview?
Okay, so my first bit of advice for people who might have a criminal record who are interviewing or filling out an application is don't lie. So if there's the box that asks if you have the felony, be honest. If it comes up, I would say your best bet is not to lie, because if your company runs a background check and you said, oh yeah, no, my criminal record's fine, and you have all sorts of stuff come back, then it's not so much do they have a felony is the problem, it's more are they trustworthy? And so that would be the number one thing I would tell people. I would not bring it up in an interview unless your human resources or your person interviewing you asks you, hey, can we run this background check? Or we'll need to do that before you start full time. We do run background checks. Is there anything we should know about beforehand? Then if you feel comfortable saying something, then I would say, if you're not comfortable answering that question, just say, I would rather talk about that at a later time. But again, if you know something's going to come back, don't lie.
No, I think that's great. So you brought up a couple of really good points. So first, yes, do not lie about your criminal record or anything in the job search process, right? I mean, more than likely, they're going to find out at some point, and whether they find out during the application process or actually after you've been hired, you could certainly get fired for that too. So that's just something to keep in mind in terms of anything. Just do not lie on your resume, the application, in the interview, anything, especially related to a criminal record. And then, you also mentioned the background check, and that was something that I hadn't even thought about in advance of this question. I was thinking more in terms of, questions on applications, which we'll talk about a little bit more here pretty soon. And then, of course, the overall question that was submitted to us was about, the interview itself. But yes, so many organizations do background checks now. And so you're absolutely right. If you lie and say, no, you do not have a criminal record, and they run that background check, you most likely are not going to get the job, because you're right. They've now completely lost trust in you. And I actually just heard a story recently of that happening, that someone had made an offer to somebody and then they ran the background check and wasn't so great. And so then, of course, that person didn't get the job, right?
Right. And so I would say that's probably the thing that's going to hurt you the worst, is if you lie. The cool thing about, at least where I work, is that we totally believe in second chances. So as long as you're honest, and if on our application there is a box, have you been convicted of a felony? And some people choose to write notes underneath, and some people just check the box. And as long as you're honest, we've found we've had no issues with anything along those lines of hiring people who have had felonies. We've also started participating in a second chance employment program where we've been working with, we just started doing it a couple months ago, so I don't have a lot of experience with it, but we are working with some of the reform counselors at different prisons. So when people are getting released, if they are coming back to the Western Kansas area, we are one of the employers that they can apply to work at. And that's been a really cool experience as well. So for me, especially with more of the felony side of a criminal record, it doesn't super make a difference to us as long as you're honest.
No, I think that program is great. Letting people know that you support these efforts and second chances, I think is fantastic, because I think it's a huge struggle when someone gets out of prison and they don't feel like maybe they have a lot of skills, or they feel like they don't even have a chance because of that record. And so when there are organizations like yours that have a program to help these people, I think that's fantastic. So that's really exciting.
Yeah, it's been really great to start working on that. And even before that, we've just had people who have had criminal records come to work for us, and we have never had an issue. So we have no problem with it.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I think too, when people see the question on an application, have you ever been convicted of a felony? I think they automatically assume that if they mark yes, that they're immediately going to be discounted. And that's not true at all, right?
No, it's not true at all. At least where I work in the area where I live, like I don't think it's a problem. Maybe 20, 25 years ago when HR wasn't as big as it is now. And we are more of a workforce that is more employee friendly these days compared to in the past where it's been more of an employer's workforce. And so I think that as far as historically, I think we're in the best place for people who are coming back from these criminal records, who are trying to turn things around. I think this is probably one of the best markets they could be in right now. So I really don't think that lying or trying to hide that you have a criminal record is super important in the application process.
Sure. And I know that you said that this, you all just started this program a couple of months ago, but was that something that you all initiated, that you reached out to like the local system, or is there an organization? I'm just asking because I think, maybe there's some other employers who might want to do something similar.
Yeah, absolutely. So I belong to the Western Kansas SHRM chapter, which is the Society of Human Resource Management. And we had a speaker out, and she's one of the reform counselors from the prisons. And so that was one of our guest speakers at our meetings. And she said, hey, we do this program. We know a lot of people are short staffed right now, but we have people being released all the time. And a lot of the times the people being released, they might be released from other parts of the state, but they suggest that you go after you're released, they say you want to go where your support system is. So they might be being released, over in Eastern Kansas, but coming back to Western Kansas because this is where their family is.
Sure.
So sometimes it's hard to get in contact with those people because, they are across the state, they are in a different job market. So they kind of help put us in contact with who's being released and who will be returning to the area. So I can actually get you some information on that if anyone would be interested. But.
Yeah, that would be great. Just in case, there certainly might be
Absolutely.
Folks, and I'm part of our local SHRM chapter too, and I think that would be, a great speaker for us sometime as well.
Yeah.
So let's go back just for a second to talk about that application question again. So when I've seen that, personally, it's typically phrased something like, have you ever been convicted of a felony? And so let's talk a little bit more about what that means and when you do need to answer yes, because I think some people may have had, a little trouble with the law in their past, and that can be very complicated, and that can be very different for, and unique for each person. So for example, they may have a misdemeanor. They may have gone through a diversion agreement. Maybe they've had a conviction that's been expunged. So those things might cause some nuances in how that question might be answered. Would that be an accurate way to say that?
Yes, I could see where some people wouldn't be sure really where to look. So the first thing I would say is, if you know, I mean, if it wasn't a felony, if you got convicted of a misdemeanor, then you don't have to check yes.
Okay, that's really good to know, because I think some people, you know, they have a misdemeanor from, you know, college or high school or something like that, and so they don't quite understand if they have to mark yes or not. So if it is in fact a misdemeanor and they ask about a felony conviction, you typically should not have to mark yes. Is that
now
correct?
If they say, do you have a criminal record, you might need to put that down. But a lot of people don't know, or I guess if you're not really in HR, you don't see those background checks come back. So the cool thing about getting to see those is we can see when it happened. And so we can look at it and be like, oh, they did something stupid 20 years ago.
Right.
They were probably 17 to 20 years old, you know, acting their age, and did something dumb. So we can see the dates, we can see how far back it was, and if we see that you did something dumb 20 years ago and you haven't done anything since, I mean, it's pretty obvious you're still a pretty low risk hire. So
Sure.
Things like that aren't gonna super like mess up your application's chances. But I guess the biggest thing would be like repeat stuff. That gets a little more concerning, but like I said, even then we've had some different people work for us in the past, and we've never had an issue with any of that either. So
sure. Okay, thank you. That's good to know.
yeah.
Do you happen to have any advice for people who have a diversion or maybe have had a conviction that's been expunged?
So convictions that have been expunged don't show up on the background checks that I see. So if it's been expunged, you probably won't need to say anything. If it was a felony, you could say. I have had people check yes on the felony box. Nothing comes back on their background check. So I'll be like, hey, you know, what the heck? And they'll be like, oh, well, it was expunged, and you know, and what do you do? So that's not as big of a deal. The only thing I can think of on like a diversion and stuff is industry specific. We have a lot of CDL drivers. So if you have a DUI and you're on diversion, you would need to bring that up if you're applying for a driver's position, because we have to run it through our insurance to see if they will cover you to drive our vehicles. So that would be the only issue I would see there. Not so much the crime itself, but just more making sure that you are insurable.
Sure. No, that was the perfect thing to say, because I was actually just going to mention that, you know, there are certain jobs where if you have a certain crime, they cannot hire you. So for example, if your job requires a lot of driving and you have maybe a DUI or some sort of, you know, crime with a vehicle, a lot of times they can't hire you. Or if you are wanting a job working with children and you have a crime against a child, again, that's not typically going to be acceptable. So those are just a few things to think about, that, you know, sometimes it can even be crime specific, and it's, you know, based on the actions that you would actually be doing in the job and whether or not there's some sort of conflict.
Exactly. So, and sometimes that just needs to be talked out with your employer. Unfortunately, if you, like in the case of my company, if we are hiring a driver and our insurance will not insure you, we cannot hire you. So that is unfortunate. But again, that's something that needs to be set up front, because if we hire you and we send your driver's license information to our insurance company and they come back and say, no, we're not going to do that, then we have to probably let you go anyway. So it's probably better to have the conversation up front in that case.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, that's just important to remember, that it doesn't mean that you're unemployable, right?
No,
it just simply means that you may not be able to get a job in that specific field. Right. For certain reasons, but there are certainly plenty of other opportunities where there's not that conflict, where you still could be employed.
And even us, we have enough job positions that aren't driver related that, I mean, we could probably find a spot for you, but you just might not be driving a semi. So
yes, exactly, exactly. Wonderful information. Do you have any other tips or thoughts before we wrap up?
I guess just if I haven't stressed it enough, being honest up front is probably your best friend, because if you have nothing else, at least you were honest in your interview and on your application. And I found, most of the time, just an honest conversation up front does the trick. And hopefully, you have good luck in your job search. But I would definitely stick to those few rules.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Fantastic information. And I mean, it sounds like you have, a lot of direct experience with this. So I really appreciate you sharing your expertise today. If anybody has any questions related to this topic or any other career development or job search topic, you can always reach out to me. My websites are careeradvantageresumes.com and careeradvantagegolf.com. You can also find me on social media at Career Advantage Resumes on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And on Twitter, it's at Advantage Career. So again, Liesel, thank you so much for being with us today. And I hope everyone has a great rest of your week. Thanks a lot.